A Chinese company has caused another major environmental disaster in Africa. A major river in Zambia was devastated overnight due to pollution. Signs of contamination have already been detected at least 100 kilometers downstream. Zambian authorities are worried that this waste spill could have long-term consequences, affecting the lives of millions. According to an Associated Press report, the spill happened on February 18th when a tailings dam collapsed at a copper mine operated by MCC Zambia. The dam was used to contain acidic waste. This company is controlled by China Non-Ferrous Metal Mining Group, a state-owned enterprise. Investigators from the Engineering Institute of Zambia say that the collapse released about 50 million liters of waste containing strong acids, dissolved solids, and heavy metals into a river that flows into the Kafue River, one of Zambia's most important waterways. The Kafue River runs through central Zambia and stretches over 1,500 kilometers. About 60% of the country's 20 million people live in the river basin, depending on it for fishing, agriculture, and industrial use. It also supplies drinking water to around 5 million people, including those in the capital, Lusaka. AP reporters visited parts of the Kafue River and saw dead fish washed up on the riverbanks, even 100 meters downstream from the mine. Sean Cornelius, who lives near the river, described the shocking change. Before February 18th, this river was full of life. Now everything is dead. It's unbelievable. It died overnight. The fish and birds vanished almost instantly. Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema has called in experts, calling the spill a crisis that threatens people and wildlife along the Kafue River. Officials worry that as the mining waste seeps into the ground or spreads further, underground water supplies will also be contaminated. Investigations are still ongoing to assess the full extent of the environmental damage. In response, the Zambian government has deployed the Air Force to dump hundreds of tons of lime into the river to neutralize the acid and reduce harm. Boats are also moving across the river, spraying lime. Just days after the first incident, another Chinese-owned mine in Zambia's copper belt was found to have a smaller acidic waste leak. Authorities accused the mine of trying to cover it up. Local police reported that a worker at the second mine fell into acidic waste and died. They also said the mine continued operating despite being ordered to shut down. 2 Chinese mine managers have since been arrested. Following government orders, both mines have now stopped operations. Many Zambians are outraged over what has happened. Government spokesperson Cornelius Muwitwa called the situation extremely serious and said MCC Zambia will be responsible for covering the cleanup costs. Zambia is one of the world's top 10 copper producers, and the state-owned company MCC is a major player in Zambia's copper mining industry. According to meeting records published by MCC Zambia, its chairman, Zhang Pei-wen, met with Zambian government ministers this week and apologized for the acid leak incident. Mwene Hemwinga, an environmental engineer who attended the meeting with Zhang and the Zambian ministers, expressed dissatisfaction with this Chinese apology. Hemwinga said, "They don't seem to have any concern at all, any regard at all, and I think it's really worrying because at the end of the day, we as Zambian people, it's the only land we have." Despite the crucial role these minerals play in the economies of these countries, Chinese companies' large-scale mining activities in Africa's mineral-rich regions, such as the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Zimbabwe, which neighbor Zambia, are frequently criticized for their environmental impact. Chinese-owned copper mines have been accused of ignoring Zambian safety, labor, and other regulations while trying to control the supply of critical minerals, leading to local dissatisfaction. Chinese enterprises in Zambia have caused multiple disturbances and crises. Back in 2012, a particularly serious incident occurred, which reports stated that hundreds of locals were hunting for Chinese nationals, attacking them wherever they be found. On August 4, 2012, violent clashes broke out at the Chinese-owned Column coal mine, located about 320 kilometers south of the capital city, Lusaka. Hundreds of local workers stormed the mine, resulting in the death of 1 Chinese employee and 4 others being injured. According to a report from the Beijing News, the victim, Wu Zhengzai, a 51-year-old worker from Jiangxi province, tried to escape by hiding in the mine but was struck by a mining cart pushed by the rioting workers. He died on the spot. 2 other injured workers were being treated. Column Coal Mine, the only Chinese-owned coal mine in Zambia, employed about 80 Chinese workers and 600 to 700 local workers. The conflict occurred on payday, triggered by a wage dispute. Earlier in July, the Zambian government had announced a new minimum wage standard, which led local workers to demand higher pay. On August 2nd, the company had reached an agreement with the union regarding the pay adjustment, but failed to inform the workers in time, which set off the conflict. On the day of the incident, around 300 to 400 local workers arrived at the mine by truck, beat up Chinese workers, and looted property. 5 Chinese workers tried to escape into the mine, but Wu Zhengzai, being older and weaker, was left behind and killed by stones and a mining cart. Mine manager Mei Xingpei described the scene as extremely brutal, saying the company was struggling to operate due to frequent strikes, and the workers were in a state of panic. Zambian police arrested 12 suspects related to the incident, including miners and local villagers, but the person directly responsible for Wu Zhengzai's death remained at large. The Southern Province Police Commissioner stated that the suspect's identity had been confirmed and a manhunt was underway. Column Coal Mines chairman Xu Jianxue revealed that after a shooting incident in 2010, the company had strictly prohibited Chinese employees from using firearms, leaving them only able to respond passively. This incident highlighted the labor disputes and security risks in the area. Column Coal Mine has also been in the media spotlight before. On October 15, 2010, Column Coal Mine was involved in a riot triggered by delayed wages, during which 2 supervisors, Wu Jiuhua and Xiao Lishan, shot at local miners. After the incident, the 2 were detained by Zambian police. China and Zambia established diplomatic relations on October 29, 1964, making Zambia the first country in southern Africa to recognize the Chinese Communist Party. Since 2018, Zambia has been investing $1 billion in installing Chinese-made telecom, broadcasting, and surveillance technology, which is part of the CCP's Digital Silk Road. These projects are all constructed and funded by Chinese companies, including controversial companies like ZTE and Huawei, making Zambia one of the countries at high risk of a debt crisis. Zambia has fallen into a debt trap due to the CCP's Belt and Road Initiative and currently owes China over $4 billion. After failing to meet repayment obligations in 2020, Zambia had to restructure loans from China and other countries. As China's major debtor in Africa, Zambia became the first African country to default during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. In 2023, Djibouti also suspended debt repayments. Gregory Chafire, the head of Zambia's anti-corruption organization, who fled the country in November 2018, said, "We have sold ourselves to the CCP." Reports indicate that the CCP's Digital Silk Road is raising concerns that Zambia, a long-standing stable multi-party democracy, is shifting toward a model of repression like China's. According to the Open Observatory of Network Interference, in 2013 and 2014, the Zambian government used technologies typically associated with CCP censorship to block at least 4 websites. The Zambian watchdog, which focuses on exposing corruption, was one of the sites blocked. The content it posted was often labeled fake news by government officials. The independent Zambian media outlet The Mast reported, "As a newspaper, if you want to call an informant, the Zambian government will always know who you are calling." Likezo Kayongo, the head of Zambia's independent media outlet The Post, stated that Zambia's media operate in fear of the government, all thanks to the CCP's authoritarian assistance. The CCP has been actively involved in Africa for 25 years. During and after the Cold War, American companies dominated the African market. However, between 2001 and 2020, trade between China and sub-Saharan Africa grew by 1,864%, surpassing that of the US and the EU. China's share of sub-Saharan Africa trade grew from 4% to 25%, while the US and the EU saw their shares drop by 10 and 8 percentage points respectively. However, trade between China and Africa is still imbalanced. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has expressed hopes to reduce the trade deficit with China. China is South Africa's largest trade partner, but South Africa's imports from China far exceed its exports. Furthermore, the CCP has failed to fulfill its 2021 promise to purchase $300 billion in products from Africa. The U.S. views China's actions in Africa as an important stage for advancing its commercial and geopolitical interests and weakening U.S. influence. China-Africa cooperation has not only led to trade imbalances, but also caused soaring debt in African countries due to opaque loan agreements. According to data from Boston University between 2000 and 2022, China provided $170 billion in loans to 49 African countries and 7 regional organizations, primarily supporting Belt and Road Initiative infrastructure projects. In 2022, Africa's public debt reached $1.8 trillion, an increase of 183% compared to 2010, growing at a rate nearly 300% higher than GDP growth. In countries like Angola, Cameroon, the Republic of Congo, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Zambia, China holds more than 25% of the external debt. However, African countries, burdened with excessive debt and limited resources, are struggling to invest in sustainable development, which has become a source of social unrest. At the same time, the pandemic severely impacted the Chinese economy, prompting the CCP to rely on the China Development Bank and the Export-Import Bank to support domestic real estate and exports, leading to a sharp reduction in loans to Africa. In 2016, China's loans to Africa totaled $28.4 billion. By 2020, this figure dropped to $2.9 billion and further decreased to $1.6 billion in 2021 and $1 billion in 2022. In 2023, loans increased to $4.61 billion, making the first growth in recent years, but it remained far below the peak of 2016. At the 2024 China-Africa Cooperation Forum, Chinese President Xi Jinping promised to provide $50.7 billion in funding support to Africa over the next 3 years, and pledged to create at least 1 million jobs. However, with China's economy continuing to slow, whether the CCP can fulfill this promise remains uncertain. In fact, funding shortages have led to numerous unfinished projects across Africa. In Kenya, the high-speed rail line from Mombasa Port to Uganda abruptly stopped 468 kilometers from the border in a rural area. In Cameroon, a $450 million highway connecting the capital, Yaoundé, and the economic center, which started construction in 2012, stalled in 2019 after the China Export-Import Bank ceased issuing loans. Nigeria's $823 million light rail project in the capital, Abuja, appears to have been abandoned, with Nigeria spending $50 million annually to repay the loan. When reporters visited the railway facilities, they found the train cars locked, the station was deserted, and the VIP lounge was filled with bats and bird droppings. In September 2024, the China-Africa Cooperation Forum Summit was held in Beijing, where the CCP welcomed more than 50 African leaders with grand ceremonies to compete with the U.S. and Europe for influence in Africa. Renmin University professor Jing Canrong, known for promoting the CCP's agenda, inadvertently revealed some of the CCP's internal affairs when he was sidelined by authorities. In a video, Professor Jin said, "Many African leaders come to China and don't do much. They just visit Beijing, enjoy good food, and then make a statement. We resolutely support the One China policy. Taiwan is an inseparable part of China." After saying that, they immediately ask for money. Tsinghua University has calculated that we spend about 30 billion yuan every year to maintain this principle. At the same time, some netizens pointed out that, just like 6 years ago, African leaders and their spouses attending the China-Africa Cooperation Forum in Beijing enjoyed luxurious car fleets, 5-star hotels, grand banquet halls, and colorful foods, while repeating Taiwan is an inseparable part of China, and once again left with generous gifts from high-ranking CCP officials. Experts believe that the CCP's years of generous spending in Africa are driven by political motives that cannot be ignored. Since its establishment, the CCP has been working hard to win over poor African countries to isolate Taiwan in international forums, such as the United Nations Human Rights Council. This help limits Taiwan's diplomatic space. In addition, the so-called aid to African countries diverts the international community's attention away from the CCP's human rights violations. Moreover, in the early days, China used international aid as a pretext to help countries like Tanzania and Zambia build railways, with the goal of transporting their copper and other resources to ports and then shipping them back to China. He added that despite the CCP's extensive operations and investments in Africa, they have not brought significant benefits to the local people, instead enriching corrupt local officials. At the same time, these investments have severely damaged the ecological environment in Africa, causing irreversible harm to local communities. This is also the root cause of the frequent and serious conflicts between Chinese enterprises and local populations in Africa. The recent spill at a Chinese-owned copper mine in Zambia has further revealed China's ambition to control global copper production by dominating Africa's mineral resources. In response, the U.S. government has taken action. On February 25th, President Trump signed an executive order to launch an investigation to assess whether the import of copper and its products posed a threat to U.S. national security. In a statement, Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick said, "So the president wants steel and aluminum in America, and let me be clear, nothing is going to stop that until we've got a big, strong domestic steel and aluminum capability. And by the way, he's going to add copper to that mix too." Lutnick added that when necessary, tariffs can help revitalize the U.S. copper industry and strengthen U.S. defense capabilities. In his executive order, Trump wrote, "Copper is an essential material for national security, economic strength, and industrial resilience. Copper plays a vital role in defense applications, infrastructure, and emerging technologies." Peter Navarro, one of Trump's advisors, told reporters, "China has long used industrial overcapacity and dumping as an economic weapon to dominate global markets, systematically undercutting competitors and driving rival industries out of business by massively subsidizing key industries, flooding international markets with below-cost goods, and then consolidating control once competitors collapse. China has successfully expanded its economic influence in sectors ranging from steel and aluminum to solar panels and electric vehicles. And now China is using the same model to control the global copper market." Navarro added that Lutnick would advance the investigation on Trump time and submit the results to the president as soon as possible for potential action. Now, the CCP's African strategy is facing several challenges: the severe slowdown of its domestic economy, which weakens its ability to invest in and control African countries like Zambia, rising local dissatisfaction due to corruption and environmental destruction, and the U.S.'s quick awakening and strong pushback. It's expected that more incidents involving Chinese enterprises will occur in Africa and other regions.